So you've just picked up an Azalea Armory deck, and you're looking where to go ahead and find some upgrades into the deck to make it a little bit more competitive at your Armory level. Well, I'm here to go ahead and give you 3 deck options that you can use to kind of start off, get a little bit of a small budget option, medium budget, and then a little bit of a higher budget option for you to go ahead and find these cards and upgrade your deck to become the best Ranger that the Pits has ever known. Welcome on in, Dragonfolk. It's such a pleasure to have you all here today. It is time for us to do a little bit of digging, and I need to be very, very transparent at the beginning of this video so everyone who watches this knows exactly what I'm talking about. Azalea is not a hero that I personally have played. I don't have a lot of reps into Azalea, and I'm only aware vaguely of what she does from a very basic standpoint. The new cards that came out in the Azalea deck, which are very much so focused on aim counters, are not normally what Azalea tends to do at high level play. Now, whether or not these aim counter cards are actually going to be worthwhile to the player themselves is entirely up to their own play style, but Azalea can be played several different ways, whether it be aim counters or traps or big dominated arrows, but for the most part, her game plan is just disruption. She wants to be able to give her arrows dominate from the top of her deck and then disrupt her opponent by removing cards from their hand, giving them a penalty for playing any cards on their turn, or even allowing them to only play one card at all, with one of her key specializations being a red in the ledger. So let's quickly go over just the Azalea deck itself. We've kind of looked over everything. You've seen that these 4 new pieces of equipment are brand new, sharpshooters being a huge, huge upgrade to the Azalea decks in total, because it is now a bullseye bracer that has a battle worn ability, so you can block out physical damage with it, and then you can also put an arrow from your hand face up in your arsenal with an aim counter and get go again. So if any of your arrows care about aim counters, which some of them still do, even in our higher tier level decks, having this sharpshooters is really, really good because you can block out physical damage and still go ahead and plop down a arrow into your arsenal and give it, go ahead and just play it out, right? You're able to just go ahead and get it down there and then put an aim counter on it, shoot it, maybe give it go again with your boots, the flight path. You can pay this as an attack reaction to have target arrow attack with an aim counter on it, get go again, and it also has battle worn. Very, very good stuff. The chest and the headpiece, things can probably change with both of these. Luckily, Hidden Agenda is also Arcane Barrier 1, so it helps you against any rune blades or wizards, really anybody that does arcane damage. And then you can also flip your arrow and gain a resource. So pretty cool stuff, but it does get destroyed after that, so it's a one-time use kind of deal for that chest piece. And the headpiece, you can destroy it, and then whenever an arrow with an aim counter hits this turn, you can draw a card, and then you'll get go again off this helmet. So activate this, and then aim counter arrows get draw a card also on hit. Very, very cool stuff as far as the base level. You have a few cards in here that are really, really disruptive, like Barbed Undertow. When it has an aim counter, if it hits, it'll essentially have choose a color, and then at the start of your next turn, the opponent, or the start of their turn, your opponent cannot pitch colors of that from their hand. So normally you would name something like blue. Maybe if you're going against Prism, you name something yellow. If you're going against a Draconic hero, they're probably still not pitching a red card. In most cases, they're not pitching reds. So red is not normally a color you'd probably like to choose, but yellow and blue are still great options. Blue specifically, because blue allows you to kind of get the most resources. And so if they can't pitch the most resources from their hand, they can only do less damage, which is really good. So then we move on, right? A lot of this stuff is very basic bare bone stuff. Just bolting shots, infecting shots, all the laces. You have point the tips. 1 red in the ledger. This is that Azalea specialization I was talking about. Incredibly powerful. If it hits a hero, they can't play or activate more than 1 action during their next turn. So specifically actions, This means they can activate as many instants as they want on that turn, but they cannot activate actions. So it is very, very nice. That's essentially just one weapon swing or one ability available. And it's just kind of really, really good. So you like to see that. You like to be able to just kind of cripple your opponent and have them not be able to do anything after a red in the ledger. Read the glide path. It's also full of pumps, right? Pumps is what we call these. They are just cards that you can play for 0 cost usually, and they get +3 to your next arrow and on hit do something. These ones allow you to opt, which is really good because you want to see if you have an arrow on the top of your deck. Because if you do, you can activate Azalea's ability and go ahead and swing in with that arrow with Dominate. Pump it up, then have it swing for Dominate, and get a lot of very good value out of that too. Ravenous Rabble, an attack action that allows you to look at the top card of your deck. Scout the Periphery, a pump that allows you to look at the top card of any hero's deck, but you're going to want to choose your own. And then you have just more pumps here. Stone Rain is a new aim counter arrow that's in this deck. If it has an aim counter, it gets Dominate automatically. And then when this hits a hero, they banish a card from their hand face down. And then at the beginning of their next end step, they'd get it back to their hand. So it's essentially going to be the card that they have to arsenal next turn. And they start with one less card in their hand. Stone Rain probably has a really, really good place in here. But again, it has to have an aim counter. It gaining Dominate when it gets an aim counter is also really good too. And then you have Line It Up, another new pump. It costs 1. The next arrow gets +3. And then you can turn a face down arrow in your arsenal face up. And if you do, you put an aim counter on it. So this deck's all about putting aim counters on things, seeing if you have a card on the top of your deck that's a good arrow for you to dominate, firing an arrow, having it go again because of a pump or something, and then going in with another dominated arrow. Death Dealer and Crow's Nest are also really, really good techs here too. This is an Azalea specialization that allows you to put an aim counter on any arrow that you flip up from the top of your deck. So very, very good to have. You just pay an additional resource, which in some cases you do have, to put an aim counter on anything. And Death Dealer allows you to pay a resource, put an arrow in your arsenal, as long as you don't have one already in your arsenal, and then you get to go ahead and draw a card. So pretty good. Love to see that. And that's kind of the whole plan for this base deck. It flows really, really well and seems to have a very, very good amount of tech to it. But I wanted to show you what $20 can do for this deck. It's really more like $22, but I keep it around the $20 range because that's just kind of what we're looking at. You see nothing changes in the armor. The armor stays pretty much the same. But what we do is we add in a little bit of extra stuff and we clean up a lot of those one-of cards that are inside the deck. So now we added in 2 more Barbed Undertow. We added in 3 Battering Bolts. Battering Bolt's a really, really good card. It's a popper in case you are going against any heroes that play Phantasm cards. It also has a really great on-hit against heroes that have no blocks in their hands, or more specifically instants. This is really good into heroes like Nu, Enigma, Zen, stuff like that. But overall, in most cases, those heroes are going to be able to, play those instants before this triggers. But even still, it means they use them in a bad order, and they don't get the full value out of it. But Battering Bolt also deals damage to them for each card that they discard this way. So any instance or anything like that, if it's not an action card, it will be discarded from their hand. So great hand tech there. It's a 2-cost 6-power arrow, which you can obviously pump up with your other stuff and have it come in for a lot of damage. Bolt and Shot we kept in here. Bolt and Shot's just an incredibly good arrow. It, if you pump it up with anything, even if it's just by +1, it'll get go again automatically. And then if it hits, you can put an arrow into your arsenal face down, which is good. Drill Shot is good for removing any kind of those big pesky armor built characters. Drill Shot does really well into things like Guardian because it has piercing if it has an aim counter, so it'll have +1 if it's defended by equipment, and it also has on hit put a -1 counter on equipment they control. So if you're going against a warrior that is utilizing something like a Valiant Dynamo, or you're utilizing something as far as the insane block power of like a Temper equipment, you can always go ahead and just start picking away at their equipment with these drill shots. Pretty good stuff, but there's only 3. It's mainly just a nice little breakpoint that if you give +3, it comes to 7. So 0 for 4, that's what we like to see. That is not an addition though, right? Drill shots and everything stay in here. So 2 Barbed Undertow, 3 Battering Bolt, Endless Arrow is cards that I've added in here. 3 Endless Arrow. This is an incredibly good 0 for 4 attack, right? And obviously if you pump it, it will have more damage to it. But more importantly, it's an arrow that recurs itself. So your opponent has to throw nearly their entire fridge and or hand at this in order for you to not get it back. But if you do get it back, you just get to keep recurring the same arrow over and over and over again. This helps kind of reduce that plan into fatigue, where you run out of arrows, you can't do anything anymore. Endless Arrow allows you to utilize it multiple times, which is why it's incredibly good here. Nothing else really changes. We do add another 2 Red in the Ledger. Red in the Ledger is a pretty cheap card, considerably. And getting 2 more of these are incredibly important because this is your game plan. This is like the biggest disruption you can do inside your deck. So Red in the Ledger is definitely a great pick. And then we also added in 2 more Memorial Ground. 2 Memorial Ground will also allow you to get back, you know, things like Red in the Ledger. It'll get back you any attack action card with cost 1 or less from your graveyard. So it gets you things back like, you know, Barbed Undertow, or even Bolt and Shot, or an Endless Arrow. Any of those things can be utilized to be brought back. But you're usually going to try to bring back Red in the Ledger. Sleep Darts also aren't a bad pick either, if you're trying to like shut down your opponent's hero power, but that's kind of what you're looking for. And then we also have some stuff for a sideboard. So as you know, the only arcane barrier you get in Azalea is your chess piece. So what I've done here is I've added in a couple more cards that allow you to prevent some damage from arcane, like Bullseye Bracers. Like I said, this is kind of like Sharpshooters, but with no physical defense value, but instead it has Arcane Barrier 1. And instead of it putting an aim counter on the arrow that you put into your arsenal, instead it gets a +1 until the end of turn. So a Bullseye Bracer into a Bolt and Shot automatically gives it go again. Lots more value there, but it also helps bring up the breakpoints and so on and so forth as far as damage. So very good. You also have the Spellfray Leggings for your arcane prevention damage. You don't really want to like pitch a whole lot to Arcane Barrier because that means you do end up losing value on cards. And you don't run a lot of blues in the deck, most cases. So Spellfray Leggings will allow you to just kind of put a stop to one of that damage and give you a little bit better of a leeway into those arcane damage dealing heroes. Then we also have the Long Draw Half Glove. This is a new arm piece for Ranger. I believe this came out during, this is either Heavy Hitters. I think this is Heavy Hitters. This came out in Heavy Hitters as an expansion slot card. This is 27 cents right now. 27 cents. So if you have not picked up a Long Draw Half Glove, I suggest doing so. It's a really, really good arm piece. You can destroy this, put 2 cards from your hand and or arsenal on the bottom of your deck, and then your next arrow this turn gets +4. Now that might seem like it's a lot, but this tech is really here specifically for a card called Warmonger's Diplomacy. Like I said, a lot of your deck likes to go ahead and go, okay, play a non-attack action, play a non-attack action, have both of those cards give power to your next arrow, and then play an attack action being your arrow. Well, with something like Warmonger's Diplomacy, if your opponent plays it, you have to choose Peace or War. Peace means you can only play like non-attack actions in a way, and then War means that you can only play attack actions and like attack with weapons and stuff. So you have to make a choice, and you can't do non-attack, attack on your turn now. Now it can just be attack, right? You can just choose War and then destroy this arm piece. Hopefully you've defended with it because it also has Battle Worn 1. And then you get to go ahead and put 2 cards from your hand and or arsenal. So, you know, 1 from the hand, 1 from arsenal kind of deal. Put them on the bottom of your deck, and then this will still give +4 to the next attack. So quite a bit of damage there on a Warmonger's Diplomacy turn. The only downside is you only have 1 of these. So you want to try and keep it to the end when your opponent's gone through maybe like 2 of their Warmonger's Diplomacies. The third one, you can make sure to go ahead and utilize something like this because you want that damage to eventually leak through. Then we've also added 2 tech arrows into our decks. Murkmire Grapnel's mainly for the Enigma matchup, because you can go ahead and have this, if it has an aim counter, it gets +1, and then damage that would be dealt by Murkmire Grapnel cannot be prevented. So any of their ward abilities get negated, and more importantly, it blows up everything on their board with ward, because they'll all trigger to try and prevent this damage, but it can't be prevented, so they'll all get destroyed and you'll be able to get some good damage off there. Fatigue Shot is actually pretty good into Guardians as well as other Rangers, because Rangers again like to pump up their attack and then come in with a really big arrow. Guardians like to pump up their attack and come in with a really big attack. So Fatigue Shot, if this hits, it allows you to have the amount of damage from the first attack action they play during their next turn. So in most cases, you're only really ever firing one big arrow, or you're hitting for one big attack if you're going from one of those go tall strategies. Fatigue Shot helps kind of reduce a lot of that damage and make it a little bit more easy to block, which is very good. So this is my $20 upgrade. These are $20, gets you all this stuff, gets you poppers for the Phantasm stuff, and also disruption into anybody who plays a lot of instants. You have more aim counter cards for Barbed Undertow, and you have more Red in the Ledgers, and you have more Memorial Ground, and now you also have a pretty well set up sideboard in the end of it as well. So let's go ahead and then move on to our next thing, which is going to be a $50 upgrade. So the $50 upgrade is $50 in addition to the last one. So it's more so just like $70, right? If you want to think about it. So now that you've upgraded your deck to this point, you can follow this path, which changes out a little bit more cards and adds in some new stuff. But you'll see not too much changed. The only thing is that we are no longer running Barbed Undertow. We're not doing it anymore. Barbed Undertow, while it's good, again, it focuses strictly on that aim counter, and while aim counters are a big deal in the deck, they're not as disruptive of some of the other arrows that you could put in for it. For instance, we replaced those Barbed Undertows with Remorseless. Remorseless is another 1-for-5 arrow that blocks for 3, but if it's put face up into your arsenal, until the end of turn, it says defense reactions can't be played from arsenal to Remorseless's chain link. So if this is a card on top of your deck and you utilize Azalea's ability to flip it up and put it onto the board, then you go ahead and have this gain that ability. It also will gain Dominate because of Azalea's ability too. So therefore, the defense reactions that could have helped them block out this are no longer as effective. Then if this hits, until the end of their next turn, whenever they play an action card, they lose 1 life. So that's incredibly important, because in like go wide decks like ninjas, where they're trying to go like 7 to 8 chain links long, that's 8 life lost on their own turn by going that wide in most cases. So Remorseless is very good into the aggro matchup, and if you can get it dominated, which in most cases you can, it's very powerful. It's also a target for Memorial Ground, so if you need to go ahead and do that more into the aggro matchup, doing that is very good. We also added in Seek and Destroy. Seek and Destroy is another pump that's incredibly cool. It does the same as most of the pumps inside the deck, which gives +3 to your next arrow, but it also gives it the text of if this hits a hero at the beginning of their next end phase, they discard all cards in their hand and destroy all cards in their arsenal. Go again. So very cool, because it allows you to pretty much just go, hey, you don't get to have an arsenal, and any cards that are left over in your hand that you might not have been able to get going get destroyed too. So if you play a Seek and Destroy into a Remorseless and they don't want to play all their cards to lose life, they end up having to essentially take a bunch of damage and also destroy their hand and arsenal that's left over. So it's either go full force or do nothing at all and lose life or lose cards, which is incredibly powerful. Other than that, nothing changes here. Not a whole lot is different, if I recall correctly. The sideboard here is pretty much still the same. We added in the Spellfray Cloak, but I don't think it's necessary to have the cloak. I still have over on the Murkmire Grapnel here. I guess I just didn't put them in the side. So I'll make sure to update that for the lists if you guys want to go check that out. But the reason these 6 cards are the only cards that are in addition to this deck is because Remorseless are about $10 a piece and Seek and Destroy are about like $4. So that ends up being another $50-ish in just these 6 cards alone. So they are great for the deck and they're very, very disruptive and they do a lot of damage, but you can obviously change them out for other things if you wish. If your playstyle is more aim, counter, focus oriented, you can go ahead and do that. But now we're going to move on and we're going to jump to add another $150 into this deck. So you spend $40 on the deck, then you got a $20 upgrade, now you're at $60. Then you got a $50 upgrade, now you're at $110. Now let's add another $150, bring you up to $260 total for what I believe to be a very good Armory build for Azalea. For another $260, right, after you buy the $40 deck. So in total, you've spent $300 on the deck. No, that's not right. $260 total. I was doing the math wrong. But how this works here is we've added in a couple of cards that are really, really important to Azalea's game plan. One of them being Skullbone Crosswrap. Skullbone Crosswrap right now, the unlimited rainbow foil version is about $40. And it is a really, really good head pace. Not only does it have Arcane Barrier 1, so it helps prevent more arcane damage in regards to that, but you can also use its ability once per turn, which is turn a face down card in your arsenal face up and then opt 1. So you'll know that Death Dealer puts a arrow card from your hand face up into your arsenal, but if you are arsenaling a card on your turn, or at the end of your turn, your opponent goes, and then it's the beginning of your turn. If you still have that card in Arsenal face down, then you can take that card, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be an arrow. It could be a pump spell. You can flip it face up and then opt. Opting allows you to see the top card of your deck and see whether or not it's one of those big disruptive arrows that you're looking for when you're going into it. So Skullbone Cross are really good. It also blocks for 1. It's kind of the best in both worlds for most cases. And then, of course, you also have Sharpshooters, Flight Path, Hidden Agenda still here. If you wanted to add more into this, you could change out Hidden Agenda for something like a Findall's Spring Tunic, but that's a further upgrade that's worth a little bit more. Then we go ahead and move into the deck. Nothing has changed much in regards to this. There are 2 cards that you can see here that are different. And those 2 cards, I had removed the 2 yellow Read the Glide Paths for these. And that is 1 copy of Premeditate and 1 copy of Codex of Frailty. Now, I know what you're thinking. Alex, you only changed 3 cards in this deck and it costs an additional $150? The answer to that is yes. Unfortunately, Codex of Frailty is a really powerful card. It's actually probably one of the most powerful cards in the game, and it's only available for Assassins and Rangers. Every Assassin and every Ranger in the entirety of Flesh and Blood, as of the creation of this video, is running 3 copies of this card. It is incredibly powerful, and it's really disruptive, and it's something that I guarantee that you will want to start getting as soon as possible. But this card itself is $70 right now. Premeditate is sitting somewhere around that like $15-ish mark. What do we have it here on this? We have Premeditate as $17.44. So overall, it's a pretty expensive build. So $70, about $20, and then $40. So that's about 100 and really like 130. But again, you can add in another Premeditate to make it to 150 if that's easier for you. What Premeditate does is it allows you to give your next attack action you play from Arsenal this turn +3, which you run arrows, which are only going to be played from Arsenal. And then the next time an attack action card hits a hero this turn, you create a Ponder token. So you get to go ahead and get a Ponder token, which gets you a card into your arsenal to allow you to then use Skullbone Crosswrap at the beginning of your next turn to find out what card that is. And then look at the top of your deck and do that kind of stuff there. So there's good synergy there. Codex of Frailty, you can check out any kind of crazy thing you can do with Codex, but essentially the concept is you get to bring back an arrow from your graveyard to your arsenal when you have no cards left in hand. It costs 0 to play Codex of Frailty, and you usually want to wait until the last turn. As long as you have an action point, you want to wait until to play this last when you have no cards left in hand. You go ahead and you get a card from your graveyard back into your arsenal, something like a Red in the Ledger if you have floating resources, or even something like a Remorseless if you have the floating resources. You can even utilize something like an Endless Arrow, a 0 for 4 that just does damage and it goes back to your hand. A lot of value in a lot of these things here, but Codex of Frailty is crazy good, but they're expensive. But for this $150 additional budget, get at least one. You don't need to get all three. It's not a race to get all three, but getting one will at least let you know what those turns are like and allows you to kind of have a better understanding about what your power turns are like. So if you really like Azalea, after all of this, if you really, really, really like Azalea, I suggest continuing to upgrade this deck. Add 2 more Codex of Frailty, add 2 more Premeditates. You can add in a Findall Spring Tunic for your chess piece instead of a Hidden Agenda. And at that point, you're pretty done. Like, there's not really much else left for you to do with this deck. So just keep that in mind. These are the things you're going to kind of be looking for and checking out. And it's very, very important that you just take your time when you're upgrading these decks, because you want to be able to play and understand what higher level play style is like. And while you might go against other Azaleas or other Assassins and stuff that have 3 Codex of Frailty, just know that it doesn't take 3 Codex of Frailty to win a game, but just 1 Codex of Frailty at the right time can shift the game into your favor and really end up making you the better player at the end of the day. So it's all about learning. But I hope you guys learned a little bit here. I hope that was enough information. Obviously, Azalea players, feel free to yell at me in the comments below and give people any kind of insight you might see there. I pretty much just went off of what I know to be incredibly powerful arrows and incredibly powerful cards to play in Azalea, and it just kind of slowly but surely upgraded the deck in that realm. Now, you can put another like $200-300 into this deck and make it as perfect as you could want it to be. Like I said, add in 2 more Codex of Frailty, that's another $140. 2 more Premeditates is another, what was that? $40. So you're already looking at $180 there. It's about $80 for a Findall Spring Tunic, so $260, and you're at pretty much like the peak you'd like to be at for this. Some other cards will come out, right? There are new cards, and there's, like I said, that aim counter build. So if you really like the idea of putting aim counters on things, that's also really, really good. There are plenty of builds for that as well. But this is kind of the information that I was able to give, and I hope that it was enough. And I hope that Azalea players aren't looking at this and going, oh my god, why do you still have this card inside the deck? I'm mainly just trying to make it an easy step up for new players, but if there is something that you would suggest to better be put inside these decks, please let me know. I'm going to have a list to all of these decks in the description below, where you guys can go ahead and check them out and upgrade them as necessary. But hopefully you are just going to enjoy your time with Azalea and continue to just put those aim counters on things, dominate some arrows, and just truly have a fun time playing Flesh and Blood. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel as well if you have not already. You can even become a channel member if you want to support the channel in a stronger way. It's absolutely not necessary, but you do get access to our podcast, The Common Language, earlier than everybody else does, as well as emotes and sub badges and stuff like that. So make sure to go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. But again, not necessary. Just being a subscriber and sharing the video around and telling me your thoughts in the comments is more than enough for me. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video of the Azalea deck upgrades, and I hope you all continue to have fun in the Flesh and Blood. And I will see all of you in our next video.